Inking is hard. Inking is definitely not tracing, and oh boy, do I have some learnings for you guys today. Hello friends, artists, subscribers, and new viewers alike. Today I'm going to be taking you on a journey of me inking my very first cover, my very first deep dive into inking. I chose a piece by Joe Mad that is all in pencils for me to ink first because he's my favourite artist, his pencils are tight, and it just seems like a great opportunity for me to learn. And if you're a professional inker, beware, I am brand new to inking, so I do make some mistakes. If you have any tips, tricks, or feedback, let me know down in the comments below, and you might want to queue up some sort of kitten video for after this because it's gonna get gnarly. Tools. Like any good inking video, let's first talk about the tools I used. I'm going to show you what I intended to use, what I actually used, and then what I'm going to use next time. I'm very new to inking, so I do have some pens, but I am by no means in the same universe as somebody who knows what they are doing. And with that comes less tools. And because of this, I'll be using what I have available at the time, instead of investing in anything new. Slight spoiler though, throughout this process, I got really into inking and I enjoyed it so much, I did actually buy some new pens, but I didn't use them on this piece because I wanted to stick to what I had at the time. I have the usual suspects of microns, Tombos, and a few different brush pens, but no quill or actual brush and ink. As for the paper I'll be using, I am using Express-It blending card. And you might be thinking, why? Well, the reason is that I've bought that in 2020, not actually used it because it's so stupidly expensive, and why not? Why not actually use it? So that's why there's no Strathmore, no Bristol board. I'm just using, at the time, what I have. I converted the pencils of this cover using Photoshop, which you can see the settings on screen now if you want to convert something to non-photo blue for yourself. As for the printing method itself, I'm just using my relatively cheap home printer, so I am in no way expecting any miracles. If we have a quick look at the artwork itself, there's a lot of tiny, intricate lines with very thin hatching, so I'm thinking I'll likely use the microns for the most part. The brush pens have a pretty significant width taper, and the Tombos are a bit chunky for even these hatching marks. But this is more than likely because of user error due to me being a noob and not having much experience with them. So I suspect I'll be using the brush pens for the spot blacks just to cover the large areas with less patchy blacks. So we'll see what happens, and let's go. Step 1 is warm-ups, and warm-ups are pretty crucial so that you get used to the pressure of the brush, the pen, or whatever it is that you're using, and the pressure from yourself mentally to get into the flow of things. What I learned about inking itself. The first lesson I learned is that not all ink pens are created equal. Some have a sheen and some do not. And when you mix the two, it looks a little bit funny. Early on in the process, I was inking Lineage's head to get used to the paper, inking itself, and get out some of those nervy jitters. I think I used my Copic brush marker for the edges, as it's quite a bit easier to control than the Pentel brush pen. The problem is, it turns out, despite the description of the inks being the same, they actually have wildly different textures and sheen types. So next time, for sure, stick to one type of ink from one brand is what I think I'm going to do. Speaking of brush pens, the properly brushy brush pens are significantly harder than I expected, but way more fun than I also expected. I can really see the appeal of using brush pens. They feel powerful, creatively vast, and also pretty damn scary. It feels like you're holding a scalpel or something, and you have to be very delicate with your touch. Otherwise, you can quite easily make mistakes. But sometimes those mistakes can be beautiful, as long as you're not inking something very intricate and precise like I am. Speaking of mistakes, do not be a whiteout noob like I am. Mistake number 2 was using whiteout on ink that wasn't completely dried. You will end up with a horrible grey mess. I know and fully understand the desperation of wanting to fix inks and mistakes. It's indeed very powerful, but you really are truly better off waiting for it to dry first. Otherwise, you'll end up with a horrible grey mass of ink. Just trust me on this. And now, onto my biggest mistake and my biggest area of learning for me, which is cross-hatching. This was self-inflicted in many ways, I think. I firstly thought doing it with ink is just as easy as it is with pencil, and I was very, very, very wrong. It turns out that the permanence of pen makes it pretty daunting to focus on getting one smooth motion. So I ended up bodging quite a few of my strokes. They were either wobbly or didn't have enough taper, which led me to do the unthinkable. Going over them again, which just made it all worse. Tools revisited. Now let's revisit the tools that I said I would use and what I actually ended up using. I like the microns, but they, or probably I, can't get a nice taper with them, which resulted in some pretty wobbly, ugly strokes. I will be using them going forward, but instead for things like outlines or tidying up areas of spot blacks where I need a crisp line. I use the Pentel Pocket brush pens for the large areas of spot blacks, and surprisingly, my orange one gives you, a nice amount of ink, but you can get a nice, dry texture with it, whereas this one, it's like the Atlantic. It just floods with ink, and as a beginner, that is totally intimidating. And before you comment, I haven't changed the ink in either of these, so they should be the same. They have the same code on the back, so I don't know. I came to really enjoy the act of inking with the brush pen though. It felt very therapeutic, and if you got an awesome stroke, it was the definition of a chef's kiss. However, with great Pentel Pocket brush pen power comes great risk. What I learned about Joe's work, it's really interesting that by inking Joe's work, I actually learned even more about his work in general. When I was looking at the swirly hatch background, I was initially a bit skeptical about his decision, but once seeing it in ink, I actually really love the texture. I was really surprised by how much my opinion actually changed just by seeing it in ink. Joe also adds little specks of flame and debris overlaid on top of the characters, which really helps to add depth. And if these little specks are over a spot of black, it would invert it so it was visible. Very cool. I already knew he was awesome at shape language, but I had extra appreciation for the shapes in Lineage's chest, using shadows and different sizes of skulls to give a very subtle background. What next? So what's next on my personal inking journey? And it's no surprise, but number one is more practice. Like, lots of warm-ups, lots of practicing, lots of just getting confident with the strokes. More understanding of each tool, where it's applicable, where you shouldn't really use it, and probably less coffee when I am about to ink. And in terms of pieces that I want to ink, it's gotta be Michael Turner. It's just gotta be, like, he's my second favourite artist, so he's gonna be next. I just want to also thank my YouTube members for helping to support the channel, as every little helps. And if you, as the viewer, have any feedback on this video, on this style of video, the production, the quality, script, please let me know, because I'm always looking to get better. And until next time, keep on sketching.